Hey everybody, good morning. Good morning. It's about 8:41 in the morning here on October 3rd, 2023. Apologies, I'm having a little bit of internet issues here, but I think I've got that squared away. So, what I'd like to do today is take a look just at the S&P 500 and taking a look at Bitcoin. I've got a couple time cycles that I want to focus on here this morning. But before I get into all this, as you all know, this is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. You're responsible for your own trades, managing your own risk, doing your own research, and I'm always just giving my opinion on the market here. So I'm going to go ahead and move on into the chart. I'm looking at the ES charts. This is going to be our S&P 500 futures. I want to focus on really three things here. I don't want to take a look at this from an Elliott wave perspective. What I want to focus on here rather is just a geometry perspective. So what I've done is I've taken my blue trend line here, and I have taken a pivot point down here at the bottom here, a pivot point down here, and then just to continue to draw that out just in case we get a breakdown. All right, so we've talked a little bit in the past over the last few sessions about what would happen if we had a breakdown in the markets going into going into the next few weeks. Now, I am expecting that there's going to be a pivot of sorts, and I want to talk about that too. But just in the event that we do have some kind of a breakdown, I'm going to have that trend line there to just kind of give me some guidance as to where we might find our next area of support, because it is very obvious here that we do have strong support here, COVID low, strong support here, October low from last, actually it's been, last year, about a year ago, actually, to be honest. And then, again, if we break down, then we've got, this support zone here if we break down. The second thing I want to talk about, which I've already pointed out, so this, again, shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, we've got a channel here, right? And we are consolidating currently at the bottom of this channel. And we've actually seen a little bit of a move underneath it, and that's okay, as long as we can continue to move back up above the that bottom trend line. And we're consolidating above it. I haven't seen evidence of a really strong reversal yet. I am of the opinion that we're going to see a bounce here. So just kind of sitting on my hands, waiting. I haven't been taking any aggressive positions, but we did take, a decent amount of equity positions, over the last day or so. And if you need access to any of all that, you can find all that information on BitDoctor.org. And we've got a promo code, which is trial2023, which is available till the end of October, which will give you a pretty hefty discount on the first month if you would like to join us on the Discord. Okay, so having said all of that, what I'm looking at here is a couple time cycles. All right, so what I've got a time cycle here, which is this orange cycle. So let me just go ahead and brighten this up a little bit just to show you all where this is at. So I've kind of highlighted it a little bit. I've got this dominant pivot low down here, and then I've got a pivot up here, right? And so what I wanted to do was to really line this up in a way where this is the midway point between this dominant pivot low here and this dominant pivot high up here. All right, so we've got basically a full cycle completion here, and basically where we're at right now, we're at a full cycle completion right now. And actually this is today. Today marks the full cycle completion, right? So we've got the COVID low, then we have the all-time high, and now we are finishing the next cycle of that. And I think that is important to recognize. We have completed basically the second cycle. All right, so if you take that, and let me just go ahead and make this back to normal, bring it down a little bit. Okay, so now let's just take a look at this again from just strictly a cycle perspective. So let me get my time cycles on here. We've got this point here, and we're going to take this all the way out to right here. All right, if we pin that there, you can see that we've got a pinpoint right here, right where we're at right now. And again, we can kind of go forward and see where the next cycle would be, which is going to be right here, which is going to be in January of 2025. And if you all know what I'm really expecting 2025 to be, I'm expecting 2025 to be very, very bullish. So what we're seeing right here, more than likely, if I had to make a guess on where the market is likely going to go over the next several months, going basically into the next 14 months or so, I'm guessing we're probably going to see a move up here, and then we're probably going to see a pretty steep fall here before we start to see really kind of like a hyper bullish move up. Now, am I saying that the S&P is going to go down to 1800? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that once we see this cycle complete, so really I'm looking at 2024 to be a little bearish, right? Maybe it's just going to move sideways, though. Maybe it won't see a big steep fall like this. I'm expecting 2025 to be that that bearish move to the upside. So again, keeping an eye on that as time goes by. That's kind of what I'm expecting for the S&P. But now there's another cycle that I do want to also pay attention to, and what I'm looking at here is the year 2022, right? So we've got a dominant pivot low here, got a dominant pivot low here, and it just so happens that we have some pretty important parts that line up with that. And as you can probably see, I've got this going in both directions. I have it going forward, and I've got it going backwards, just to take a look and see if there is any confluence with this. And if you take a look at this dominant pivot low here and this dominant pivot low here, what has happened over the last few cycle completions of this, again, we've got a low here, we've got a low here, and then what ended up happening, right? So we had a pretty significant top here, we moved up into it, then we had a drop, and then here we had a continuation to the upside, but now here we are right at that same time cycle, right? We've completed the second cycle from the COVID low to all-time high, and here we are today. And it just so happens that if you take a cycle from this low here to this low here, we're basically at that same cycle right now, right? So we've got one cycle, two cycles, three cycles. This is the fourth cycle, and we are at the completion of that. So there are several cycles that are actually in a completion phase really this week. Today, yesterday, tomorrow, something is going to be occurring over the next probably 24 to 48 hours that's going to make a decision on where the market's going to go from here. And right now, ES is under 4,300. We haven't really invalidated where I'm looking for an area where we really have to start to worry about the bull case. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're very, very close, right? If we go down much further, we're going to, risk closing below this channel, and it's probably not going to look very good. But if you take a look at the cycles, moving down into this cycle, it usually rebounds. Moving down into the cycle, it is rebounded. And here, we moved up into the cycle, and we fell. The only exception would be this guy right here, where we moved up into it and we continued moving up, but now we're moving down into the cycle. So what's going to happen next? Is it going to be the opposite of this, where we go down into it and we break down? If it is, we're going to be watching this blue trend line. That's why it's here. That's why it's important. At the very end, I will take a look at SNX, INJ, and probably take a look at Tron a little bit too. I haven't taken a look at Tron in a while, so I'll do that there at the very end. So I'm going to go and move on to Bitcoin now. Bitcoin, we talk about time cycles with Bitcoin as well. So let me move this over into log scale. And I just want to, start here with this higher time frame approach, looking at this. And again, what I've been projecting is that we would have seen a move up here into, 28,000. And that is, again, exactly what has happened. And I'm kind of expecting, now that we've had that move and it happened much faster than I expected, I didn't expect that move to happen until mid-October. So now that has happened, I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. I'm kind of expecting a move down into the end of the year for Bitcoin in particular. But time cycle, what has generally happened? Move up into the cycle, we have fallen. Move up into the cycle, we have fallen. Okay? This, again, very similar to the S&P. This is an exception, but we did fall significantly afterwards. We moved down into the cycle, we moved up. Now we moved up into the cycle, and so far we have moved down, and I'm expecting more downside. And maybe this takes a lot longer to play out, even though the move here is very, very fast. The next time cycle, just for the record, is February of 2024. Okay, February of 2024. chances are pretty good we're going to get a buy the dip moment in 2024 that we're not expecting, and it's going to happen for whatever reason. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm going to go down to a 4-hour time frame because I want to continue to focus on the liquidity hunts that have been happening in Bitcoin. I have been outlining this ever since that this formation was recognizable. Okay, we had another liquidity hunt, and again, that just happened, on Monday in the wee early hours of the morning. We had that that same thing. We had a little bit of liquidity. We had a little liquidity hunt up here, on this upside, and we have since started to fall from here. Now, what's going to happen? Well, we are finding a new range. Now that we moved up into this zone, we found some support here, whereas previously when we moved up into the zone, we fell through the floor. Moved up into the zone, we fell through the floor. Now we move up into the zone, and we have found support. And what ended up happening, we had a range expansion, right? We talk about range expansions. This should be a terminology you should already be familiar with. We found a range expansion to the upside and a rejection of that range expansion, which is basically exactly what I said would happen. Okay, so I'm going to remove this guy, and I'm going to move this. I'm going to go ahead and start adjusting this because it looks to me like we have a little bit of a completion here. But what I said at the time was we probably would see some upside into mid-October, and it was probably going to poke above the range expansion. And that, again, is exactly what happened. I put my point out here at about 28.7. We went as high as 28,592. So, I was within a couple $100 from where that upside target was. And again, if you've been watching for any amount of time, you were here watching this as I was explaining all of these things. So now that we've got this potential for a wave B to be in, not saying that it is, but there is a decent chance that the B is in. Well, now we're going to be looking for the completion of this. So again, we looked at this as a 5-wave move down. 1, 2, 3, 4, a shallow 2, a deep 4, and then a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down here into wave A, liquidity hunt. Then it looks like we've got a little bit of an ABC to go here into wave B, right? So it looks good. The structure looks good. So let's just go ahead and just take a look at this structure and see if this is, this is good for a wave B. Does this look good for a wave B? All right, so let's go ahead and take our trend-based fib extension tool. I'm going to tap the bottom here, dominant pivot low, dominant pivot high, and we get the pullback. All right, so here's our pullback. And I'm going to go ahead and tag it right there. All right, so let's just take a look and see where that landed. Where's the 100? Well, look at that. The 100 just so happens to be almost exactly where we failed. Right? We didn't quite get there, but I would say that this is close enough. If there was somebody that was long, that was waiting for a tap of the 100 to take profit, they got screwed over, but it was close enough. It went beyond our range expansion target, which would have been a great place to be taking profit. To tap that, break up above it, and you had 4, 8, 12 hours of time to take advantage of that to, take profit on any long position you were in, not necessarily to go short, but to take profit on what you had already realized. But now that this has happened, right, you can see already that I do have projections that take us down into the low 20s. But is that something that can actually happen? Well, let's go ahead and pull up a different chart. So let me go ahead and do this. We're going to pull up this guy over here. I haven't used this chart in a while, so I'm just going to go ahead and clean it. All right, so we have this clean. I've got this on a weekly. Let's take this down to a 12-hour here. All right, so the 12-hour, we can see that we've got a curl over on this 12-hour, right? Just like we've had a curl over here. So let me zoom out because what I want to focus on is the fact that we've got a significant support zone right here, right? So I'm going to outline this guy. This is really, really important, okay? What I want to focus on is the fact that we have the potential for, okay, let me put this right here. We have a potential for a shoulder, we have the potential for a head, and we have the potential for a right shoulder, right? So your right shoulder doesn't have to go as high as the left shoulder did. It just has to have a bit of a rally off of this support line, which we commonly refer to as the neckline. All right. So is it possible, right? Is it possible that we see, this A, then we see a B down here into this zone here, find some support, and then we go up here into wave C, and this would go into the end of October before we see this break down? It's absolutely possible. Are we going to go all the way down to below 20,000? I would say it's possible, but we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. But what I do want to say is, if this is a head and shoulders, and if this does actually come to fruition, what would our target be? I'm going to use just my fib retrace. I'm going to take this dominant pivot high here from the head. I'm going to go down to the neckline. And our target is $20,000 exactly, right? So that you can see right there, $20,010. That would be if this is a head and shoulders and we break down below this neckline. You can short $25,000 and target $20,000. Chances are pretty good that's going to hit if this is a head and shoulders. This would be pretty bearish. People will probably start getting scared. They'll be looking at whatever returns that they've got, and they'll be like, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and get out because, hey, I was really smart. I bought all the way back here in November of 2022. And again, I was talking about buying back here too. I've been dollar cost averaging ever since we were down here. Every day I buy a little bit. Every day I buy a little bit. And if you're in it for the long haul, that's the strategy that you should be employing. You can have some fun money. There's nothing wrong with that. But your net worth shouldn't be all in leverage trading, right? So I've got a decent amount that I've accumulated, well below 30,000. My average dollar cost is probably somewhere around 20 to 21,000 if you were to take everything, put it all together. But at the end of the day, I do believe we're probably going to go back down there, in which case I will be taking larger bites when we get down to that area, right? I'll be taking larger bites because I am very bullish on crypto, especially going into, as I mentioned before, 2025. So I'm not saying that that's what you should do. I'm just saying that that's what I am doing. So again, if we do see another move up higher, which is very possible that we do, I am expecting a move down sometime either into the end of the year or next year sometime. All right. The other thing that I'll say is Bitcoin has been moving sideways, and even here in the recent weeks, it's been moving up, whereas the S&P 500 has been moving in the opposite direction. It's been moving down. But again, today we've got those time cycles for the S&P 500. Our time cycles are really out of sync with Bitcoin right now. So I don't really have anything significant that I have found that is worthwhile to mention that that we need to talk about when it comes to time cycles for Bitcoin. So I'm not going to be talking about time cycles for Bitcoin right now because there's really nothing relevant here. But what I will say is that we do have two significant time cycles that are basically commencing today, which I think is important to mention, which is why I bring it up. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple alts. I've got a couple minutes here before I'm going to get into my my prep mode, getting ready for all the options trading today. So I had a request to take a look at SNX. Let's go ahead and take a look at SNX versus Tether. I'm going to go to a daily time frame here, and I'm just going to kind of zoom out. All right, so obviously, looking at this guy, I'm going to put some moving averages on here. So let's see here. Not going to put the cloud. Let me get this guy right here. All right, what I want to do on the daily, and when I look at alts, what I like to do is I like to focus on some of these important moving averages, 2155, 100, and 200 exponential, and then we have the 200 simple. One of my favorite things to do, especially when it comes to alts, is watching the moving average crosses from the 200 simple to the 200 exponential, because when you have an expanded move, right? When you have an expanded move, and in this particular case, I'm talking about this move right here. Let me get this different color. So we're going to do this, and we're going to do it as white so you can see this a little bit better. An expanded move to the upside. What I look for is, you can see here, we've got, let me zoom in just a little bit just to make this a little easier to see. what I look for, or at least what I like to look for, is the existence of the exponential, the 200 exponential above the 200 simple. And when that crosses and the simple crosses above the exponential, that is usually an indication that there is going to be a little bit of a pivot that occurs. Usually that means that something significant is happening. Now, if we see a move sideways, right? So let me again move this back over here. There we are. All right, so if you see a move sideways into it, I consider that insignificant and not to pay attention to it, right? So when we had this cross right here, insignificant, don't pay attention to it because it was just moving sideways. But if you can get a good move, I look for those moving averages to cross, and that usually is an indication to the end of that move. But for where we're at right now, looking at the daily, it really doesn't look all that great. We're below all major moving averages on the daily, which is not great, not great. And if I were to take a little bit of a switch and move this to the 3-day, let's just go ahead and take a look at this. Again, even on the 3-day, we are below all major moving averages. Nothing about SNX looks really good right now. On the 3-day, I mean, yeah, you could argue that we're probably going to be in for a little bit of a bounce. The last time we were down here was, really when we were down in this area, and we had a decent bounce off of that. And it wasn't insignificant. It went up almost 100%, about 70%. But we really need to get above some of these moving averages to really consider anything. If anything were to look good right now, it'd be Link, right? So Link has been doing, pretty well. If you take a look at Link on the 3-day, I've got some levels that I've pointed out here. We got above that 21, then the 21 crossed above the 55, where, we're seeing a little bit of a rejection here at the 200, and this is on a 3-day time frame. Probably going to come back here and retest 720, maybe $7 exactly. If we go to a daily, let's just take a look at this here. Above all major moving averages, everything is crossing bullish. These are good signs. A test of this 21 exponential currently at about 7.25 would make a whole lot of sense. Looking at the Wave Master indicator, we had a good squeeze here, and we had a good expansion off of that squeeze. So we've pulled down, right? We had a pullback. We moved sideways. We got into this squeeze, and we eventually, basically launched, right? So Link had a pretty impressive move from this low here to that high there. That was about 41%. That's a decent move, even for altcoins where people expect a lot more. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So your retest of this 21 exponential would make a whole lot of sense. I want to take a look at INJ. I think INJ is getting to a point where it is almost done. So let me just clean this up here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. I've got a significant area of resistance up here. Let me clean this too. Haven't looked at this one in a while. All right. Significant resistance at about $10.46. We'll call it $10.50, right? And that's basically based off of clustering that has occurred back here, right? We had some resistance and support, and that continued on throughout basically all of 2021. It really ended in 2022 when things fell, right? And then the same thing with this resistance level here. Lots of resistance. We had a little bit of, maybe a little bit of support here, if that's what you call it. But the majority of all of the testing of that level there at about $15 has been resistance. But now that we're up here, I would say, if INJ is going to do the same thing that Bitcoin is doing, then, we've got, just a couple potentials here. Right, a potential that we get a retest of this on the daily at about 725. And then we do see potentially another move higher. Probably is only really going to go as high as about 825 or so. And then it's very, very possible this does break down going into, basically 2024, maybe the end of 2023. We'll see. Probably going to come back down to about 560. It could even go as low as, all the way down here at about $3. So the downside potential is pretty extreme, but I do have to be a little bearish going into 2024 on altcoins. Bitcoin dominance is probably going to see a little bit of an uptick. People are probably going to be moving from alts going into Bitcoin, which naturally is going to decrease the value of those altcoins. Even if your USD price really kind of sustains and maintains with Bitcoin, chances are pretty good the returns you're going to get on Bitcoin is probably going to be a little bit better than what it is on those altcoins. Bitcoin goes up 3%, your alt might only go up maybe 2 or 2.5%. Until we get to a certain point where dominance peaks, and then we start to see a significant move to the downside. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin dominance, and then I'm going to go ahead and end this here. So BTC.D for dominance. Let's just take a look at this. All right, so again, I'm looking for this move here to go up almost to 60% going into 2024, right? This goes into June of 2024. And this happens to coincide with one of those cycles that I was talking about on the S&P, right? Bitcoin dominance increasing significantly going into 2024. And then you're looking for your alt season. This is going to be it, where Bitcoin dominance likely falls through the floor and goes all the way down into the low 30s, maybe even 30%, which sounds ridiculous, but it's very, very possible that something like this happens, and that's what we're looking to capitalize on going into 2025. So I've got I've got about half of my bull market picks posted on the Discord, and if you need access to that, you can find that information on BitDoctor.org. Use the promo code TRIAL2023 to get cheap access this first month to get access to some of these, and I'm going to continue to post these bull market picks going into 2024 and waiting for those buy zones to hit. And it's going to take time and it's going to take patience. I'm not buying now. I'm going to be waiting, and I'm going to be buying later. I do have some alts, obviously, that I do hold. I've been holding Cardano since about 5 cents, and I'm happy to continue to hold that for now. And so I do have some altcoins that I do hold on to, but there are 10 more that I'm going to be looking to get into over the next year that I plan to capitalize on in 2025, because I think the rate of return is going to be significantly exponential in 2025, and I'd be looking for that to be really the beginning of the end for crypto, or at least altcoins in particular. I would expect regulations to really be cracking down, and that's going to be your last chance to really, make a decent amount of money in crypto. All right, that's all I've got for you right now. If this video did help you in any way, shape, or form, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, share. If you need access to our Discord, Trial 2023, that'll be $30 for that first month. And you will get access to all of our trades, all of our options trading. You'll have access to some education in there as well, access to our chat room, and of course access to the indicators. So you'll get access to the Wave Master indicator, the Momentum Channel indicator, and we've got a couple other indicators in there as well that are volume related, and you'll get access to all of those. So feel free to pop on there and ask any questions that you'd like. I'm usually there all day long. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a good day, good night, and a good evening. Take care, everybody.